Parasyte, the Maxim. Oh, where to begin? The show kicks off by introducing us to Shinshi Izumi. He's a wimpy high school student afraid of spiders and overall scoring fairly high on the neuroticism scale. But on one particular morning, he starts noticing his right hand is feeling peculiar, almost as if it has a mind of its own. And it isn't until he is forced to save a little girl from a car accident that he realizes his dream sequence earlier of being burrowed into by an alien-like parasite was real. This opens the can of worms on a series of global murders that are occurring during the show. As Shinshi comes to know Migi, his right arm parasite, he pieces together that there is a growing movement of parasites around the world. Parasites that, upon taking a human host, begin violently craving human flesh and engage in pseudo-cannibalism. Shinshi and Migi are a unique case in that he effectively stopped Migi from taking over his brain during the initial burrowing phase, and I guess once the parasite matures on a part of the body and doesn't get the brain, it cannot later take over the brain. We follow the two as they encounter various other parasites, all having unique personalities a lot like people do. They all share similar traits, but there is a variance in their bloodlust and rationality. One thing that is not variant among them, for the most part, however, is their lack of empathy, though the show explores ways that the parasites may begin developing empathy with the Raiko Tamura arc, and with Migi's sacrifice later in the show. Shinji struggles throughout the show to find a balance between his social life and his now undeniable investment in the parasite world. He endures hardships from not being able to protect Kana, a girl who has become strongly infatuated with him and is obviously superior to Satomi in every conceivable way, and from his mother succumbing to a parasite herself. After a serious injury from fighting the parasite that took control of his mom's body, Shinshi undergoes a significant character transformation. Migi had fused the hole in his chest with his own parasitic cells, and as a result, about 30% of Migi's initial cell mass had now assimilated into Shinshi's body, granting him superhuman reflexes and strength, as well as a very conflicting newfound level of apathy and calmness. We learn of an environmental political movement springing up led by a man that we later find out to be human, cooperating with a group of intelligent parasites looking perhaps to work their way up and find a safe food source of humans down the line. The Japanese government has been investigating the murders under the radar this whole time, with their intent to control the parasitic outbreak reaching a fever pitch shortly after they kill Raiko Tamura with a tip from a private investigator. The peak of the show is upon us as the government stages a fake panic inside the town hall, the main parasite headquarters. As civilians and parasites alike group up into the lobby of the building, waiting to be escorted out due to a dangerous man with a hunting rifle, the police begin scanning civilians for parasite DNA, and a battle ensues as the parasites among the crowd begin panicking and acting in self-defense. The police force show no mercy in stamping out the parasites, and even go so far as to kill a few innocent humans who acted suspiciously. They kill all the major players on the parasite side aside from Goto, a hyper-aggressive, extremely dangerous parasitic life form created by Raiko Tamura. Consisting of 5 conjoined parasites, he is nearly invincible, and easily wipes out the SWAT units engaging him and escapes, but not before he sees that Shinshi is with the police. He tells Shinshi that he will come for him. As the series comes down to the last final episodes, we see the face-off between Shinshi and Goto. Migi sacrifices himself, leaving the viewer to wonder if he truly has developed empathy for his host Shinshi. Shinshi, without his right arm and injured from the fight, finds his way into a small town and is taken in by a generous old lady. They have a dialogue on what it means to survive if it costs other people their lives, and Shinshi resolves to finally confront Goto himself to end the madness, knowing the alternative is only more needless death. Utilizing his superior human senses, he approaches Goto in the night, catching him sleeping. He calls out, hoping that Migi is somewhere inside of Goto. After a failed attempt at slicing open his neck, they have a short battle and we see a power struggle between Migi and Goto, confirming that Migi is alive and is protecting Shinji. Shinji is backed up onto a giant landfill to await his death as Goto approaches him slowly. He has only seconds left and, in a last-ditch effort, grabs a piece of scrap metal stuck inside the mountain of garbage he's on and shoves it deep inside of Goto's side. Migi fuses back with Shinji as Goto is struggling to control the other 4 parasites inside of him. A strong toxin from the metal is causing havoc inside of his body. He eventually succumbs to his wounds and is defeated, but still alive, and has about a 50% chance of recovering. Shinji is left with the final call: kill Goto for good, or leave him be. He considers the consequences of humans on the earth, what it means for him to value his own life over a parasite, and contemplates whether it might be unethical to use his human moral system on a non-human creature. He comes to a decision and allows fate to decide Goto's outcome, rather than himself. After a brief quip by Migi on his disdain for humans who try to do good by Earth, a non-sentient object with no preferences, rather than do good by sentient creatures, Shinji goes back and kills Goto for good. The series ends with a wrap-up episode. Migi, having been exposed to Goto's host body, has experienced a significant awakening in his consciousness and tells Shinji he will be going into a deep sleep for some indeterminate amount of time to wade through his information. Shinji becomes a fairly regular guy again with a normal right arm, and his romance with Satomi stabilizes. There is a brief conflict in which the serial killer used earlier in the show sees Shinji with Satomi. He kidnaps Satomi, they wind up on a roof, a few civilians get killed, and he poses a question to Shinji, asking, who is the true human? He ponders that he might be the most human of all, simply following his instinct and bloodlust to kill. He throws Satomi off the building, and we see Shinji rush to catch her. Barely missing, he lowers himself in defeat and has a brief internal monologue where Migi appears and tells him he's getting tired of holding her. The show ends with Shinji pulling Satomi up, realizing Migi must have woken up and caught her in the last second. They lay there on top of each other in shock as police break out onto the roof. And that's pretty much the story. So, all that said, how good was the show actually? Is it worth a watch? It depends. The show started out, in my opinion, pretty strongly. The setup to the world was fascinating, and the characters were likable. The action sequences were good, and there was a genuine sense of danger when parasites would show up at Shinji's school and endanger his friends. The stakes felt high. We didn't know too much about the government's involvement, but viewing the parasitic underworld from an outsider perspective left so many questions, and it made us curious to see just what kind of political movement they could get. I thought that Shinji's transformation was certainly interesting as well, particularly his struggle with the human aspects of his personality conflicting with Migi's apathetic, calm personality later in the series after fusing with their DNA. His inability to understand basic social norms, such as not throwing a dead puppy into the trash, makes the viewer question the act itself. Throwing the dead puppy into the trash does no harm, but it violates human sentimentality, and we begin to see a divergence between that very concept and Shinji himself. I'm a sick freak for some teenage drama, so I did enjoy the struggle between Kana, Shinji, and Satomi. Having Kana idolize and obsess over Shinji seemed like it would have some very real implications for the story, especially given her ability to literally sense parasites and therefore Shinji. But unfortunately, or fortunately, she got killed by this very thing, which is a decent segue into at least one significant problem with the series. The characters are really, really dumb. Now, I get that Shinji is a high school student, and so are his friends, but holy hell, they do some stupid shit just to get the plot moving. Without listing a bunch of examples and meticulously rewatching the show, the prime example really was Kana. The girl herself was stupid and naive and too infatuated with Shinji to think rationally. Wandering off in the middle of the night to see some random parasite signal was unthinkably dumb, to a point where it didn't even make sense. The subtitles might not have been perfect, but she claims to be able to tell when she's sensing Shinji specifically, and even says as she's walking towards the parasite that kills her that It's probably not Shinji, but fuck it. Like, the problem with this is that Kana represented an opportunity, right? A significant opportunity to create something really interesting with the plot. Some special type of human who can sense parasites, who perhaps plays a bigger role in the overall ecological system that the show constantly harps about. But nope, she just pretty much knowingly walks to her death and justifies it by thinking Shinji will be there in time to save her like he has in her dreams. There's a lot of things to pick apart about the scene, but I'll move on to the next problem with the show. Killing off Raiko Tamura. By far the most interesting, developed, and highest potential parasite we meet in the show was a huge mistake. And the scene when it happens was really, really stupid on so many levels. First off, dude, this character was awesome. She not only orchestrated the entire environmental movement between Mayor Hiyowaka and the parasites, but she has created parasites, was planning on testing something on her child, had a human child. Secondly, it leaves a hole in the show that never really gets filled. We don't have nearly the same investment or interaction with the rest of the parasites she was working with. And as a result, we're left with bland, emotionless, undeveloped, stereotypical sociopathic villains who seem to have no interesting nuances about them. Thirdly, and this is where animes in general really annoy me, but the way Raiko dies is a clear and cut example of writers deciding that she dies, even when it doesn't make any logical sense in the world we're in. It's a plot point that needed to get checked off, and that's it. The scene before she dies, she literally kills the PI who is threatening her baby. Then, suddenly, when like 10 officers are surrounding her with firearms drawn, she seems to not be concerned with the very real possibility that they will shoot her child. And even worse, they don't seem to care themselves. They light this bitch up like a Christmas tree, literally shooting her like 40 times, despite Shinji warning them the child is human. And all she does is extend her hair a little bit and slowly walk towards Shinji like some kind of fucking martyr. It's like the scene is meant to make us sympathetic with her and her struggle with her true purpose as she deals with the conflict between herself and the potential human emotion she's getting from her baby. But it comes across as cheap and tacky and artificial because it just doesn't make any sense, especially because she clearly didn't go to the park to commit suicide by cop or anything. She went there to get her baby. Like, yeah, she invited Shinji to give him her baby, but I mean, for some reason, but why would she suddenly lose the will to live, especially if she has a newfound connection to something on Earth? I just did not buy this scene at all, and it leaves us with a new problem in that Shinji suddenly regained his humanity. As if the change in his personality was from some mental built-up trauma, rather than the physical convergence of parasite DNA into his body, physically represented by the tearing feeling in his heart. It's even shown in the show that he later still has parasite-like features to his personality, but much more of the early show Shinji comes out, and when you consider that early show Shinji is kind of a weak, bland, uninteresting pussy of a character, it really is a negative way to steer his arc. Genuinely, it made him a less interesting character after this point in the series, which is a serious problem when you're about to hit the last quarter of the show, a time where you want to build up anticipation, tension, and finally, during the last few episodes, resolve your conflicts or create some setup for a second season. Also, probably the funniest scene in the whole show was Hirama just randomly showing up to Shinji's school like a fucking crazy person and telling him they were gonna win. Who the fuck was that scene for? Now, let's just get into what we're all thinking when we're concerned with critiquing this show, and that is, of course, the final 5 episodes. This is truly where the show takes a turn for the worst and is largely why it left me with such a negative impression. The potential for nitpicking in this area is vast, so I'll try to keep the problems I had with it as high level as possible. First problem. The police are so very stupid. The contrived nonsense of filing people one by one in a neat line to scan them with a giant, obvious scanning device was so painfully dumb that I actually want to blow my brains out right now just saying that. Here's how you actually do it, Instead of making a big huff and setting off the alarms of every parasite in the building, how about you scan them covertly without 1,000 SWAT personnel outside, and then make moves to separate humans from them and kill them? Second problem, the police are so fucking stupid. This is a joke, but that scene when the SWAT unit just follows Goto into that bigger room, like, dude, the writers are really stretching the viewer's goodwill here. Okay, actual second problem. Why the fuck is Shinji even here? Okay, I'll answer that. Our protagonist is shoehorned into this scene so that we have a reason to be watching it. But just why? He literally sits there all episode and has nothing interesting to offer at all. The police don't know he's part Parasyte, so why would he even be invited to an operation like this? It creates more questions than it answers, and it really makes no sense. Third problem, Goto is boring as shit. Really, truly boring. He was never developed as a character partially because he isn't one. He's just a dude who likes to kill, which is fine. But as the final main bad guy in the show, you need to really compensate in other areas to ensure the viewer doesn't lose interest, and they don't do that. Fourth problem, Goto's death. We all probably agree his death was pretty lame. It's a typical case of writers writing themselves into a corner and then having to defy basic principles of the world to get out of it. Shinji should not have been able to kill Goto at this point. It really made zero sense. Yes, Shinji's fast, but Goto is physically superior in every way. The dude literally can predict bullet trajectories and dodge them, so a human, even amped up with Parasyte DNA, should not be able to catch him off guard. Fifth and final problem to note. Too much waxing philosophical. This is something that isn't so much a problem for most of the show, honestly, but the final episodes for some reason get ridiculously heavy-handed with the philosophical pondering, and it eats up significant screen time. Now, I'm all up for internal dialogue of a character struggling to make decisions that have ethical consequences, but there are a few problems. Firstly, people don't watch a show to hear a character ponder very basic philosophical concepts as if they're groundbreaking. I don't buy that Shinji would really struggle that much with deciding on whether Goto, a psychotic, blood-frenzied parasite, should be allowed to go literally rip people apart limb from limb and consume their flesh. The entire show he is vehemently against it, and now suddenly it is of serious consequence to protect people. His decision is even quickly undermined by Migi because obviously thinking it's more ethical to cater to some sentimentalized view of Earth as though Earth is some conscious agent with interest rather than actual sentient people who would have been pulverized by Goto is fucking stupid. And it presupposes this idea that the solution to environmental issues is to kill humans rather than allowing humans sufficient time to reverse the damage and reach a technologically manufactured equilibrium with the planet. So Shinji goes back on his decision immediately and kills Goto, and just has a total 180 and is like, well, I'm just a human and I must pursue my interests. So basically the writers want you to know that the main character at the end of all this tragedy of the story is just as flippant, naive, and gullible as when we started. Awesome! Anyways, let's wrap it up. I'll now offer my rating of the show. I give Parasyte the Maxim a low 6 out of 10. Why a 6 out of 10 despite all the shitting on the show I just did? Well, because despite its major flaws in the latter third of the show undeniably has a strong setup, decent enough characters, and the concept is excellent. This is offset by the heinous failure to execute and adequately resolve or expand upon what were potentially extremely rich plot threads, landing the show at 6 out of 10. Were the whole show to maintain the quality of the first 12 or so episodes, it would likely land a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. Now, in terms of investing 7 hours of your life into a show, a 6 out of 10 is a pretty bad score, but ultimately the choice is yours. That's all I have for you today. Go ahead and drop your hot takes in the comments. I have seen a lot of praise for this show, so I'm looking forward to the discussion. Cheers.